Welcome to this video, which is an overview of the Connecting Up Digital Transformation IT Strategy on a Plate program. My name is Sandra Valance and I'm the Acting CEO of Connecting Up and architect of this group consulting program. Connecting Up is a not-for-profit organisation. Our purpose is to help fellow not-for-profits leverage the digital world to positively impact their communities. The digital world is expanding beyond IT software, hardware and digital marketing to new innovative service delivery and measuring social impact. Connecting Up believe that not-for-profits with the right tools and skills can and do achieve great things for their communities. We have a long history of affordable software, hardware, educational events, and more recently, group consulting. We partner with over 40 organisations to deliver high-quality products and services, specifically meeting the unique needs of the not-for-profit sector. Now, let's look at what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to go over why you need to have a digital transformation IT strategy, and we'll look at what options you've got to get there. We're going to look at what doesn't need to be covered in your digital transformation IT strategy because it is a business document. It's certainly not a technical document. I'm going to talk about how we go about the process so you can understand that a little bit more, and the cost of undertaking our process, and also the scholarships that are available. And I'll also provide some feedback from previous participants. Okay, why the need for a digital transformation IT strategy? You probably get a lot of calls and emails from IT suppliers spruiking their wares. It can be confusing to know where does it fit with us. Is it snake oil, or is it a distraction, or is it actually quite useful? The purpose of a digital transformation IT strategy is to create more understanding, alignment and control over IT decision making. You'll have a better understanding of what to do with those phone calls. No one wants to waste any of their precious resources, being that time or money. A digital transformation IT strategy increases focus for where resources will be directed. So if we look at, we know that there's a lot of change going on in technology, and that is either an opportunity or a distraction. We also know there's lots of demand for scarce resources, and it is hard to know what to prioritise. So what we do is we actually align our IT projects and investments very much with our business strategy and the business requirements. It's all driven by business requirements. So the IT strategy does become a business document. It's not a technical document, and it's designed to improve the level of conversation around investments in IT with both the executive and the board. And the executive and the board actually have a really major role in determining how strategic technology is within the business. So that's a really big role of this IT strategy. So let's look at the options on how to create a digital transformation or IT strategy. The least cost option would be to look at some of the free templates that are available online. And in attachment 1 to this overview, I do provide some links to those free templates. So that is going to be your least cost option. A moderate cost option is this IT strategy on a plate group consulting program that we're going through in this overview. So it is a group approach. It is based on a proven methodology, and we try and make it as visual and heat map driven as possible. So that's going to have a moderate cost associated with it. If you'd like to look at more one-on-one options, certainly organisations like Info Exchange, Maxim Consulting and Human IT work quite closely with the not-for-profit sector and can help you develop a one-on-one IT strategy. Because it's working with you one-on-one, of course, that's going to have a bit more cost than a group approach. And then, of course, there's the bigger end of town, the Big Four, and certainly I know that Deloitte, KPMG and Ernst & Young still provide IT strategy type services and digital transformation strategy type work, but they're going to be a lot higher cost, perhaps targeted to more the big end of town. So they're your options when looking at developing an IT strategy. Just in terms of talking about our approach a little bit more, we really do take advantage of the features of Microsoft Teams when we do this, and we set up a private area for each of the agencies participating, so we can actually share information confidentially between each of the agencies and work directly with that agency as part of their individual feedback. But then we also set up a cohort site to share the power of the group. So that's how we take that group approach that ensure the confidentiality of each agency's information. Okay, one thing I really do want to cover is what isn't covered in an IT strategy. it isn't meant to be an overly technical document. So what we don't include is things like a network diagram or a list or audit of all your IT assets. Now, these are important things in managing your IT, but they don't necessarily need to be understood or would be understood by your executive or your board, and they don't actually add necessarily that much value to the IT strategy. So we certainly do assess them at a high level, but we don't need to include the details in the IT strategy. Okay, so how do we go about the process of developing the IT strategy within this group environment? Where we start is understanding the business strategy and the level of sophistication in IT that business strategy requires. So if you're looking at very pervasive use of IT, that requires you to have quite sophisticated IT. However, if IT or if the business requirements are really just for recording certain amounts of data, then you can perhaps have a more basic or functional approach to IT. So we start with actually going, where do we need to position ourselves? Then we look at what are the business processes of the not-for-profit at a high level, because it's the business processes that actually the application systems need to support. So by knowing what the work is, we can look at what application systems we need to support those business processes. Then we look at what infrastructure is required to underpin those application systems. And then we look at what support is required to manage both the infrastructure and the business systems that we've identified. We also then look at creating heat maps for those systems, and we actually look at how well, based on how sophisticated you want your IT to be, do current systems actually meet your requirements. And then we create a narrative around those heat maps. It's always good to know the history of how you've arrived at where you are now. It's important to know because it will inform the future as well. So that really has set the scene for what you currently have. The other part of the IT strategy is we need to look at what are the current trends, and there's some general trends that we look at, probably about 15 general trends. And then we also look at what trends are specific to your sector that you also may want to address as part of your IT strategy, actually very important to address in your IT strategy. And we look at what opportunities they present for you. So once we know that, we can then look at what is the priority of the resulting IT projects that flow from this, and look at identifying the investment associated with those IT projects. And then we also share what's available through Connecting Up via our donated and discounted products. So as I mentioned earlier, we have relationships with some 40 organisations, and it's good to know what they are when you're making your purchase decisions. So a question I've been asked here is, should we have a business strategy completed before starting an IT strategy? I would say ideally yes, particularly if business change is anticipated. You want your IT strategies to support where the business is going. But if the business is likely to remain stable and you don't have a business strategy, you can develop an IT strategy to support your current business model and requirements. And the thing is about an IT strategy is that you want to update it annually to show the impact of the IT work that you've done in the last year, and also to recalibrate it to either changes in the business strategy or to address IT trends that last year you may have been able to put on the back burner, but this year actually require more attention for whatever reason. So we actually also, with the consulting program that we're putting together, we will actually be running annual alumni programs to actually do that update work. So clearly that's not as much work as the first step of putting together your IT strategy. So that'll actually be quite a bit shorter, but we will run that alumni program so we can actually keep these things up to date. And the great thing about updating it every year is when you actually have an IT strategy, it doesn't get implemented in 1 year, because there's usually many projects in that. But over the series of years, you can actually see what IT changes then that your organisation has made, and you'll be able to see that in the heat maps, which is really great to sort of see that history and how you might have gone from a sea of red to a sea of green. Okay, so in terms of the group consulting program, it's run over a 13-week process. We run it as 6 sessions and there's one every 2 weeks. The reason for a fortnight between sessions is to allow you to do homework. And after each session, there will be 2 to 3 hours of homework. And it's really important that you do this because our individual feedback to you is based on the homework. So to really get value out of the program, we need you doing your homework. We also suggest that you have 1 to 2 hour meetings with your managers or teams to discuss the outcomes of each of the sessions and actually make sure it's refined to your not-for-profit. We ask that you return the homework to the program facilitator by a certain date. So then that, of course, gives us time to review your work and actually make sure that all the preparations are tailored to your requirements for the next session. So the homework is a really big part of this, and actually scheduling that into your calendars once you've registered for one of these programs, I would totally recommend doing. So I'm going to go now through a bit of an example to give you a feel for what the IT strategy sort of process looks like. So this is an example actually of a New Zealand organisation that participated in our IT strategy on a plate program. I've de-identified them, but they're a health-based organisation. So just going to run through this as a bit of an example so you sort of see the level of data and the outputs that we create through the process. So we start with the strategic goals or the business strategy of the not-for-profit. So this talks to a range of business strategies that they want to meet over the next few years and also how they're going to measure their success. And then we look at how the business strategy influences the IT position. So as I mentioned before, organisations can position themselves as sophisticated, where they're actually looking at IT being an enabler of strategic advantage for the not-for-profit, or it may just be functional, where they're wanting good business process support for their day-to-day operations. Or they actually may agree that really the role that IT has in the organisation is quite basic and it's not a key focus of the organisation. And any of those is okay, but it is important to know that because it'll actually define how you assess and measure how your IT is today, and it then sets the direction for what IT you need. But it is also important to know that whatever you decide, it actually is going to make a big difference to how involved both management and even potentially the board need to be with IT. So if you want to be sophisticated, that means that management, your executive, need to probably provide more attention and thinking around IT in the organisation. They're also going to need to provide more resources, both financial and people, and be very heavily involved in change management to take people on the journey around why the IT does need to be sophisticated to support where they want to go. And similarly for functional and basic, then you can probably, it'll change how much attention and thinking you need from both the exec and management. So in the case of this example, they wanted to position themselves, they were currently positioned as functional, and they're really looking for in the future to become more strategic. But at the moment, functional was where they wanted to land. And that, of course, then impacted how they measured the quality of their existing systems. Then we look at what are the business processes for the not-for-profit. And we split this into 3 areas. We look at the governance, so basically the strategy and management and the board governance, committee level governance, and the business processes associated with that. So we've divided that into strategy, policy, legal, risk management, and the board or committee activities. I'm going to go down to the bottom now. We also look at business services, which is finance, HR, quality, IT, fixed assets and property management. Now, these ones in green, they tend to be very common amongst not-for-profits. And so they're sort of a common part of the template. The middle bit is the operations, and this is actually what is unique to each of the not-for-profits. And this is where a lot of attention gets focused in the session to say, what's different about your not-for-profit? What activities do you do that need to be supported by IT? So in this case, this organisation needed to market and sell their services. They had field worker services. They also delivered training and education and community services. And then they really wanted to evaluate and report on their services. So this is the bit that really changes for each of the not-for-profits involved in the program. Then we look at what are the applications and the infrastructure that is required to support those business processes. And once we've got those in place, we look at assessing how well those systems actually support the business processes. And we use a heat map. So this is the legend to the heat map, where green is good, blue is where there's a project going on, yellow is where there's IT support and it's not having too much of a strategic impact. Orange is where there is Microsoft support, but it is having some strategic impact. And red is where it's obsolete or there is a particular strategic impact that this system is having on the organisation. So here in the example, we can look at, for this organisation, how their systems were performing. So we can see, let's say, in marketing and selling around their tender and fundraising system where they're just using Excel, that's a real problem for them, as it is with an Access database for their customer relationship management system. And their customer relationship management system actually supports a number of business processes, marketing and selling, delivering services, all the way through to evaluating and impacting evaluating and reporting on the impact of the services. So this is where clearly they're going to be wanting to put some attention going forward. Fortunately, they also have some green, which you can see as well, and some blue around existing projects. So this is how we create a heat map for the existing systems that they have in place. As I mentioned in the overview, we also look at what trends and new technologies that the not-for-profit may want to consider. And here's a bit of a generic list of some of the ones that we do look at. And we'll tailor this once again for each not-for-profit to which ones are relevant to them. And we go through the details of each of these, as well as looking at what trends or new technologies are specific to their sector. So, for example, if it was a not-for-profit that was helping visually impaired people, we would want to look at the new technology that's available in that particular space as a trend for that organisation to consider. And then we look at saying, okay, as a result of the analysis, what are the projects that emerge from the assessment? And we'll describe those, prioritise them, and look at estimating a cost and how we would go about resourcing those projects. And once again, Rome wasn't built in a day, so we need to be able to look at how we're going to prioritise those projects over multiple years based on what's important to the organisation. And then finally, we move on to next steps, and we would say finalise the draft, present it to your committee or exec for approval, and then you start progressing the IT projects. Now, as I say, it's a high-level document, so we've just identified the projects. For all major projects, you're going to then need to be able to move on to the activity of creating a business case for that particular project, describing the scope in more detail and providing that to your committee for agreement before proceeding. And once again, that will relate to your delegation of authority and the cost of the project, etc. So we look at the projects at a high level in the IT strategy, and then you get into the detail when you get to the actual project. Then we also just link it back to what's available through our donated and discounted projects. And once again, what we've done here is we've actually put our donated and discounted projects into the same structure as the IT strategy. So you can easily find what systems are available to support particular business activities. So, for example, we can see that for customer relationship management, we have Enright Care and Apricot as options to support that area, or you could look at things like Microsoft CRM. Now, one of the questions that I've been asked here is, do we explore other IT options which aren't on Connecting Arts donated and discounted platform? So once again, the answer to that question at this level is no, because as you can imagine, if I was to look at what systems are available in each of these areas, that would be a very long list. But for specific areas, so for example, case client management systems, which tend to be very important to not-for-profits, I do have rather extensive lists for this, and I am willing to share those with you. So when the time is right, that's the sort of thing I'm more than willing to get in contact with me, and I can share those lists with you. And then once again, we look at it from an infrastructure point of view. We'll look at what are donated and discounted products that we have available to share with you. Okay, so what's the cost of doing our program? So the base cost to participate in our group consulting program is $2,000. And at the end of the program, you will have a tailored digital transformation IT strategy for your not-for-profit. But it is dependent on you doing your homework. So we can also help you with that. We do have some additional consulting packages where we will work with you one-on-one to actually assist you through the homework and also beautify your not-for-profit your IT strategy at the end if you feel that you would like that as well. We also offer half and full scholarships to small and micro not-for-profits, so those with a revenue of less than $5 million. And the link here will take you to the application process. So as I say, to get full value out of our process, we do need you to do the homework, and that's what actually allows us to give you the one-on-one feedback. So there's clearly a lot of value on that. The other question I've also been asked is how often are we running this program? So we're looking at running it 3 times a year. We have limited numbers, so we can only do a cohort of 15 organisations at a time. So the next program will be in late February, and then we actually plan to also run programs in late April and September. So that's sort of the annual program that we're looking to run here, Feb, April and September. So 3 times a year. And also thought I'd provide you with some feedback from previous participants of how they've experienced the IT strategy, digital transformation on a plate program. And we've had some really great feedback, and we know what people value out of it. They really value the template. They also really value the fact that we step through it in quite a logical fashion. So sometimes that's actually hard to see at the beginning. Sometimes you really sort of only see it at the end when it all comes together, but people really appreciate that. And they also appreciate that they've got a tool that they can reuse again on their own. And so there's been some really great feedback that we've sort of had on the program. And then we also do get feedback after each session to help us refine the process and how we run it with people. We sort of take that feedback on board and certainly make improvements along the way as well. And finally, I did mention there was an attachment 1 with some online templates. So these are links to free templates that are available online. So when you should be able to click through to those things. And finally, if you've got any questions, please do not hesitate to get in contact with our capability coordinator at events@connectingup.org. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions that you have. Thanks for listening to this video, and we hope we connect with you again soon. Thanks. Bye.